Now you may think, all that is great, but I'm probably never going to touch standard ML in my entire career. Well, you may be right. You may think, I'm just gonna be using Java my entire career. Well, I don't know about that. That's possible, but, you know, it's unlikely. But let's assume that it's true. What you're failing to account for is that Java is going to change. It is changing and it will continue to change. And not only does it change, coding standards will change. What I'm getting at here is that, say you want to sort strings, sort integers by how they appear by strings. So basically sorting integers alphabetically. So and say, you create a custom creator function, but you only want to use it once. So you want an anonymous function, right? Except before Java 8, there were no, technically were no anonymous functions. There were anonymous classes. But here's the thing. Anonymous classes tend to look like this. And this is a really simple class. Imagine if I wanted to do something complex in here. It would be several lines long, and we have something that's several lines long as arguments for a sorting function. So this is unwieldy. I mean, we could put this somewhere else, but then we're putting something somewhere else that's accessible outside of the string sort method that shouldn't be outside the string sort method. So either we have unwieldy looking code or code that violates sort of best practices. If there's a method or a procedure or a function, whatever you want to call it, that's only used at one point in the program and would not make sense to use outside of it, it should only be accessible in that part of the program. So what Java 8 does is it adds lambdas or anonymous functions where I'm pretty sure it does the same thing. So obviously it is far, far less unwieldy looking, and how your code looks is actually somewhat important if you want to work in industry, because the job you're going to have is probably going to be at a company. At the very least, you'll be working with other people, and your code needs to be readable. And it's clear that this is a lot more readable than this. So this is just speculation, but it's educated speculation. What's going to happen is that this is going to get, this being allowable, this specific instance of a anonymous class, using anonymous classes like this is going to become passe. It's going to become against several companies' coding standards, and you're going to have to use lambdas because they're simply much more concise. Now, you may still use anonymous classes for some things, but I want to say that they're going to be partially supplanted by anonymous functions, which really sort of degenerate, internally to anonymous classes, but they're easier on the eye, basically. And we've seen this before, where language standard. What happens is that a language comes out. We realize that some of the features of the language aren't very good, and then we say it's against coding practice to use them in a lot of instances. And I've been harping on C a lot, and as my disclaimer said, I don't hate C. It's just that it's an old language in this case. see as goto statements, and the guide to how to use goto statements are you breaking out of a nested loop? Nested loops? No? Okay, don't ever use them. And that's it. So what might happen is anonymous classes, unless you're in this specific circumstance, don't use them. And by the way, goto is a reserved word in Java, but you'll get yelled at by the compiler, and it literally does not do anything. And, you know, let's go back to the assumption that you'll be able to continue to code in Java. You probably won't, not for the rest of your life. And there's going to be newer languages that are going to pick and choose the features it likes from older languages. So, Python's actually a lot like this. It sort of has sort of the general, its programs can have the general structure of, like a C++ program, but you don't have to worry about these brackets. They're basically the whole point of removing the back brackets and having indentation work to define blocks is to enforce proper coding practices, essentially. That's like, in my opinion, that's why, it has its advantages. It's its main advantage. And also, Python does have, a lot of functional programming features that you may not actually use if you're a Python coder, but they're there. They're there in a much bigger way than they are in Java. So basically, the language you use is going to change. A specific, like, both in the case, a specific language is going to change, and you're going to be probably switching languages, and even if you use the same language, how you use the language will change, and it looks like some of the features that are in standard ML will become more commonplace in other more, conventional, iterative languages.